Welcome to the 5-Minute Disasters podcast from 5minutedisasters.com, where each week we uncover worldwide disasters in about 5 minutes. If you enjoy the show and would like to support us, why not consider buying us a coffee? Head on over to 5minutedisasters.com/coffee to see how. This is episode 4, The Great Fire of London. The Great Fire of London in 1666 stands as one of the most devastating urban disasters in British history. It ravaged the heart of London, transforming the city's landscape and leaving a deep impression on the people and architecture of the time. On the 2nd of September 1666, a small fire broke out in the bakery of Thomas Fariner on Pudding Lane. What began as a minor incident quickly grew into an uncontrollable inferno, consuming much of central London and changing the course of the city's history forever. London, in 1666, was a crowded, bustling metropolis with a population of around 80,000. However, it was also a city of narrow streets, timber-framed houses, and highly flammable materials. Most buildings were constructed from wood, with thatched roofs and overhanging upper stories that nearly touched those of buildings across the street. The city's infrastructure was also ill-prepared for a large-scale disaster. Firefighting techniques at the time were rudimentary, consisting primarily of bucket brigades and the use of fire hooks to pull down buildings to create fire breaks. These weaknesses were compounded by the dry summer of 1666, which had left much of the city's woodwork and thatch tinder dry. The fire began in the early hours of Sunday morning. The flames spread rapidly, fueled by strong winds from the east. By mid-morning, it was clear that the situation was far worse than initially imagined. As the fire gained momentum, it jumped from house to house, with sparks and embers carried by the wind igniting rooftops and causing entire streets to catch fire. Efforts to contain the blaze were hampered by confusion and disorganisation. Sir Thomas Bloodworth, the Lord Mayor of London at the time, famously hesitated in ordering the demolition of buildings to create fire breaks, reportedly saying, "A woman might piss it out," thereby underestimating the scale of the disaster. Within hours, the fire had grown into an unstoppable force. Thousands of Londoners were forced to flee their homes, gathering what belongings they could carry, and seeking refuge in the open fields beyond the city walls. Many residents took to the River Thames in boats, while others fled to nearby Moorfields and Finsbury Fields. The scenes of panic and chaos were made worse by the thick, acrid smoke that filled the air and the deafening roar of collapsing buildings. Despite the efforts of fire brigades, the fire continued to spread, feeding on the city's densely packed buildings and narrow streets. Over the next 4 days, the Great Fire of London continued its relentless march through the city, consuming some of London's most famous landmarks. St. Paul's Cathedral, which had stood in London for centuries, was completely destroyed. Its lead roof melted in the intense heat, and the stones of the building exploded from the fire's fury. Thousands of houses, churches, and public buildings were lost. The Royal Exchange, a symbol of London's commercial power, was reduced to rubble. In total, an estimated 87 churches, 13,200 houses, and 52 livery company halls were destroyed. By the time the fire was finally brought under control on September 6, 1666, much of London lay in ruins. Remarkably, the official death toll recorded was low, with only a few lives reportedly lost. However, historians believe that the actual number of casualties may have been higher, as the intense heat would have incinerated many bodies, leaving little to no trace. What is certain is that the Great Fire left tens of thousands of Londoners homeless, and the economic impact was immense. Many businesses were destroyed, and the cost of rebuilding the city was staggering. In the immediate aftermath, attention turned to the reconstruction of London. King Charles II was heavily involved in the recovery efforts, as were prominent figures like Sir Christopher Wren, who would later design the new St. Paul's Cathedral. The rebuilding process was guided by a desire to modernize the city and prevent future disasters. Wider streets were introduced, and timber construction was largely banned in favor of brick and stone. New fire regulations were also introduced to ensure better preparedness, including the establishment of insurance companies specifically to cover fire damage. Despite the destruction, the fire had a significant long-term impact on the development of London. The rebuilding process transformed the city, giving it a more modern layout and infrastructure. The fire also led to significant advancements in fire prevention and firefighting, with the introduction of more organised fire brigades and better equipment. The Great Fire of London remains a symbol of both destruction and resilience. Though much of the medieval city was lost, the disaster paved the way for a new era of urban planning and architecture. Today, the legacy of the fire can still be seen in the city's layout, as well as in monuments such as the Monument, which was erected to commemorate the tragedy. The rebuilding of St. Paul's Cathedral under Sir Christopher Wren stands as a testament to the city's recovery and transformation in the wake of one of the most devastating fires in European history. The Great Fire of London continues to capture the public imagination as a cautionary tale of disaster, resilience, and the indomitable spirit of one of the world's great cities. Despite the tragic losses, London rose from the ashes, rebuilt itself stronger, and forged a new path into the modern age. I hope you enjoyed that episode of the 5-Minute Disasters podcast from 5minutedisasters.com. If you did, don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss any future episodes. And while you're there, why not leave us a review? Also, please consider listening to our other 5-minute podcasts, which you can find at 5minuteproductions.com. Thanks for listening, and I'll see you next time.